guys, it's Lady Raven, the Wild Witch, and welcome to The Witch's Inn. So today is Monday, and tomorrow is the Sabbath. So for today, I wanted to talk a little bit about Yule traditions and where they come from, and what some of those themes are, and how you can maybe incorporate that into your everyday life and into your celebration. Um, so let's talk about that. I was going to give a few minutes for people to join, but I'm a little bit late, so I'm just going to move on right ahead. So let's talk about the word Yule. This is the very first thing that I want to talk about, and that word actually comes from a festival that was a Germanic festival which took place in the Norse paganism tradition. And so it was a celebration at the end of the year, and it was 2 weeks long. And I believe that it started like right on the solstice, and it ran for 2 weeks after that. And it was a celebration to bring the harvest back, and a celebration to make sure that ensuring a good harvest for the next year. So sacrifices were made. A lot of people kind of not congratulating each other. Man, sometimes not having English as my first language really hurts and sucks. People would be celebrating together and making sure that supporting each other so that the community would have what it needed to ensure a good harvest the following year. And the main tradition of that is what everybody knows as the Yule log. And so the Yule log came from that Germanic Scandinavian tradition. And so what that was is they would take a log, and normally the common log used was ash, which also happens to be, if you follow Norse paganism, you know that ash is also Yggdrasil, which is the tree of life that they would use. And so that was not the tree of life, excuse me, the world tree that they was very, very important in Norse paganism. And ash is also a tree that's associated with the sun. And so that is the tree that was generally used. And they would take a large ash tree. Now, the important thing is that tree could not be bought. So that tree needed to be either harvested from the land of the person who was having the ritual, or it needed to be gifted to them in some way, shape, or form. And it was a giant, giant tree because it needed to burn for a whole 12 days. For the duration of the festival. So they would cut that tree down, they would bring it into the hearth or whatever they were, and they would add flour to the tree. They would do all kinds of things, add all kinds of offerings in that tree of what it was that they were trying to bring back for the new year, for the new harvest. So then they would, if they did animal sacrifices, a lot of times they would cover themselves in blood from the animals, or they would put a lot of that blood on the tree itself. So it was really very, very traditional, also kind of bloody festival. And so they would light the tree on the first day of the winter solstice, and then that tree would burn all the way through for 12 days. And when the 12th day was reached, they would snuff out that tree. They would put the tree out. And then the rest of the tree, whatever was left of the tree, they would hold on to that, because that is what they would light the next tree with. So the tree for the year, they would take last year's stump that was left over from the tree that they burned. They would light that. And then from that stump, they would light the ceremonial tree. And then that tree would burn for 12 days. They would put that tree out, and they would save that stump to repeat the process in the following year. So the word Yule log, which everybody knows as either a delicious cake, which actually has a French origin. So the Yule log cake comes from the French creation that came during that time as a specific cake that they made that looked like a tree. But the Yule tradition itself came from the Norse peoples, came from the Germanic peoples. So that's one of the traditions that we generally talk about during the winter solstice. The second tradition that was celebrated during this time was the tradition of Saturnalia, which took place in the Roman Empire in ancient Roman times. And that was a tradition to celebrate the god Saturn, which is also the god of the harvest. And so the idea of presents and Christmas ornaments and all of that comes from Saturnalia. And so during this festival, which was a fertility festival, it was a festival to ensure fertility in the next year, very similar themes to what the Norse festival was. It was also a great festival of debauchery and all kinds of things, but it was a time where slaves were allowed special privileges, and there was a lot of gift giving that took place during this time. So the gift exchange idea that we have in Christmas today actually originated from Saturnalia. And they would also decorate their trees with shiny things, which is where also that tradition came from. And they would bring boughs of greenery indoors and decorate the insides of their homes with those. So if you think about decking the halls, that was pretty much where that tradition came from. And of course, Christianity kind of just came in and took over everybody's tradition, and this is where we're at now. But this is the origins of those traditions. So both of them are times to celebrate fertility in the coming year and to hope that the sun would come back again. So in Saturnalia, the festival would culminate. It would actually start earlier, and it would culminate the celebration of the new sun. So when the days start to increase, the festival would celebrate during that. And Saturnalia this year, the winter solstice this year is going to run from like the 17th of December through January 6th or something to that effect. And this is when the traditional Yule period runs as well. Which is interesting because a lot of times, if you look at modern, we tend to associate winter solstice as being a similar thing to Yule, being like one and the same. And although technically the themes are the same, Yule is a 2-week festival, whereas the winter solstice is a 1-day thing. So whenever you're working with that, keep that in mind. And so those are the two traditions that comes from. Another tradition that you may want to think about is the caroling, right? The Christmas caroling that came from that. And that is a tradition of the wassailing. And that actually comes to us from England. And basically what that was, it was a time, the way that started was a time that the peasants would go to their lords and they would offer their gifts of blessing and song. And in exchange, the lords would give them food. So that was where that came from. And so that festival, they would come in and they would sing, and then that would give an exchange back to them as food, or sometimes there would be gifts, there would be an invite to share with them or something to that effect. Later on, there was a period that became very problematic because that tradition, as the times changed, like in the 1800s and maybe even late 1700s, wassailing became kind of similar to the trick or treating in Halloween, right? So where you would have these bands of young people that would go around to these more wealthy people's houses, and they would knock and they would demand food and things like that. And if they didn't get that, they would do something in exchange. So a lot of the wassailing songs, some of them come from the more ancient British times, but a lot of them that says, we're not going to leave till the wassail is drunk or given or celebrated. That is where that comes from, where they would come in, and actually that sometimes, even if they weren't offered food or allowed in, there may have been vandalism and a bunch of other things that would go along with that. So it was also an exchange at this point, right? We are giving you something and you are giving us back something. Because think about what's going on in the world at that time. It's really, really cold, and the fields are not producing anything. And so it's a time in the middle of winter where maybe the peasants are going, this is a big festival, and we're really freaking hungry. So we're going to go offer them what we have, which is song, and hopefully they will give us some food. So this is kind of the origins of that. There's another origin of that, which involves in a specific part of England where their main export was cider. They would go and they would wassail to the orchards. So they would go into each orchard and they would sing to the trees and to the tree man, and they would give offerings, and they would ask for a bountiful harvest of apples in the next year so that they could continue with their main trade, which was apple cider. So there's a lot of the themes during this festival is a theme of fertility, and it's not just fertility now, right? So when we look at the other pagan festivals, we're looking at fertility now or what have you, or giving thanks for the fertility we received. This is a long-term planning festival because we know we're not going to be planting anything in the winter. We're not going to be doing anything in the winter. So the idea is fertility in the year to come, so that this year has closed and we are now looking to the whole year and hoping that this whole year is going to be very fertile for us. So that is the lore and history between these different traditions. So let's talk about the solstice itself, what that is. So when we talk about the winter solstice, if you think about it, it's the time that the sun is actually at its longest, the earth is at its longest elongation from the sun. And what happens is at that time, you either have the earth is going to be tilted in one way or another. So when it's tilted in a specific way, it's going to get the longest day of the year. And when it's tilted away from the sun, it's going to get the longest night of the year. And when it comes to the other side, that may be a different situation, right? The other side, you're going to get the longest day of the year here, the longest night of the year there. So this, because the orbit is elliptical, this is what ends up happening. And so this is why the summer solstice and winter solstice, they shift based on which hemisphere you're on. So when you look at the energy of what the sun is actually doing, right? Think of what the sun actually represents. Sun brings life to our planet. It brings warmth. It's also representative of the ego, right? It works with the human ego and our sense of self and identity. So you can imagine that in ancient times, before we had the beauty of having buildings and having, heat and all of those things, winter would be a very, very difficult time. So it would be a great time during this time to affirm who we were as a people, so that you could imagine some of the debauchery that would ensue if people didn't have enough food, if people didn't have enough resources to survive the winter well. So that is a great theme, is a great term and a great theme to reaffirm kind of who you are. It's the rebirth of yourself. It's the rebirth of the sun coming back. So you kind of gave everything you had in the previous year, and then everything waned. You're tired, you're exhausted after the harvest. It's time to take some downtime. And then you come to the very, very cold day of the winter solstice. And it's just kind of a very, very cold, difficult day. And this is the day where you step up and you reaffirm who you are, and so that you can look to the new year and say, no, you know what? I have to survive one more year. I have to get out there and do that again. And so also keep in mind that in ancient times, they weren't sure that the sun was going to rise again. And I'm talking about like pre-agricultural times. So they believed that festivals were needed and celebrations were needed for the sun to actually come back and give them what they needed. Keep in mind that the sun for us is a resource today, it's a resource for vacation, and it's a resource to, do all kinds of things. We don't think of the sun on a daily basis as being basically a resource for pure life itself. But for ancient times, where they didn't have the comforts that we have today, the sun meant survival. So going through a period where there was no sun, it was a very difficult period to survive. So when the birth of the sun comes in, it's hope. It's this big surge of hope that I am going to survive. One more year, I'm going to survive. If I had to stay in darkness longer, I would not survive. We would not have food. We would not have enough food. We would not be able to plant more food. We would not be able to do any of that. So the idea of it is, when you look at that, you say, okay, so here is the sun. It's back. This is hope. This is hope that I will survive, that the cycle is going to begin anew. I'm not trapped in this. I'm going to be able to plant. I'm going to be able to have all the things that I need to have. So when you look at the natural world and what it is that is happening during that time, it's really important to think about that in terms of what does the sun symbolize, so you can really tap in to the festival of what happens during this time of year. And if you think about those themes, that's really where all of these festivals came from, right? Fertility and looking to ensure a harvest, to ensure survival in the next year. So as we grew as a society, as we got more and more sophisticated, we started understanding the importance of the sun and understanding how it was that what effect it had on our everyday lives. And so that became also an important component of Yule. So when you are getting ready to do your own Yule celebration, what are some of the themes that you're going to incorporate in modern life? Since, we know the sun is going to come back and your survival is not at stake in the wintertime, unless you're, you don't have a home. If you're homeless, obviously you're at the mercy of the weather. But if you're not in that situation, what are some of the themes that you can bring in? So remember, what a farmer is doing during this time is they're planning the next year. This is when they're doing maintenance on their equipment. They're looking and saying, am I going to have to rotate the fields this year? What kind of seed am I going to have to buy new seed? What kind of fertilizer am I going to get? They're maybe looking at what's out there. Maybe they're getting their books in order, because I guarantee you during a time of harvest, they have one thing and one thing only that they're focusing on. They don't have time to get all that stuff together. So those are some of the more modern things that you can start taking note from farmers and incorporating those into your life, right? So looking at saying, what are my projects for next year? What are the resources that I need to secure to do that? So if let's say your new project is to start a new business, what do I need to do? I need a business name. I need maybe a website. I need a product. I need a marketing campaign or a marketing idea. I need to start thinking about, how am I going to do this out there? Who are my suppliers going to be? How am I going to create this product? How am I going to price this product? So those are all the things that you can start sitting down and really kind of getting to the meat of how those things are going to happen. If you're not starting a business, or maybe if you're looking to get a promotion in your job and that is your goal for the year, you can start planning basically. Okay, so what are the things I need to hit, the key things I need to hit to get to my promotion, to get to where I need to go. So if your goal for the year is, let's say that this is the year you're going to get healthy. This is the year where you're going to say, all right, I am going to once again give up sweets, or give up smoking, or give up, what have you. Then you start planning. What is your plan of action going to be? So maybe you say, if I'm giving up sweets, maybe I'll wait till after the holidays to do it. always a good idea. I think trying to give up sweets the days before the holidays are kind of like self-sabotage. But doing it right after that and saying, okay, what is my plan going forward? How am I going to make sure that I stick to my plan? Do I have just a diet plan? Am I going to have an exercise plan that's going to go with it? Am I going to have nutritional goals? Am I going to see a nutritionist? What are the things that I'm going to do? So this is a time that is downtime for us. It's a time of planning, of looking to this next year and making goals and making decisions as to what is it that is my plan for this year. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm a journaling fanatic, right? So I love to journal, and I buy all my little, I call them day timers because I'm old. And although in modern times, it's not, they have all kinds of names for journals, but it's a day timer. And so a lot of them out there, if you get like Commit 30, or you get the Dragon Tree Apothecary has one, Rituals for Daily Living or something to that effect, which is fantastic. And if you look on those books, in the very beginning, there's a step-by-step process that takes you through planning your year. Why do we do this at the beginning of the year or at the end of the previous year? Because this is the right time. The energy is right for doing that right now. So, and it's interesting to me that in our today's society, because of the weather, because we are, and we're good that we can take advantage of summer and all that, we look our vacation and downtime to be in the summertime, right? Which is really kind of, we're going against that energy. Vacations and downtimes and times for planning and actually not doing things, not working towards anything, should take place in the winter, because that is when the earth is kind of inward. And this is when everything is like, okay, we can't do anything right now. We are just going to plan, and we're going to wait for things to happen. So I bet you one of the things that I noticed is, once I start having my big vacations not be in the summer months, and really focusing on doing work in the summer, and maybe having my vacations later on, maybe in the fall, or maybe, in the winter, or maybe even early spring, I noticed that my productivity went up, because I tend to be very, very productive in the summer. But if you like to go on these big, long vacations in the summertime, you'll notice that you're basically flipping it, right? So you're using the energy of the summer, which is good work energy, to relax and chill and go on vacation. And then you are using your relax and chill energy to try to work. So, I mean, you can do that, but you kind of go against the grain of the energy that what the planet is offering to you during that time. So, but some people don't have options, because a lot of us who have children, a lot of you, because I don't have children, a lot of you who have children depend on children's school schedule to know when you can take your vacations. But if you don't have children, what I would invite you to do is to try to kind of flip your schedule a little bit and see maybe if you can do your longer vacations and times off in the winter times, and maybe leave shorter vacations for the summer, where the summer is the time that you are going to be doing multiple types of work and getting all of your stuff done. So, but that is all I have for today. I am going to apologize for not getting the Yule ritual out to you guys in time. It will be out there before the end of the day on the Raven Moonlight website. I just went in and updated our Yule correspondences page. That's going to be out by the end of the day. And then I'll have the ceremony, the 2021 Yule ceremony, which is going to be really pretty. And it's going to involve tea lights, lots and lots of tea lights. So I'll have that out there for you if you're waiting on that to get your ceremony started. And I hope that everybody has a fantastic Yule and Christmas. I won't see you guys till next week. So Merry Christmas for everyone. And have a great Yule. And don't forget, tomorrow when we do our live, we are going to be doing, the way that I'm going to have that set up is I'm going to have a typical Yule altar. And I'm going to have on that altar a lot of items that you may want to incorporate into your practice. So it's going to give you kind of an idea of how to set up an altar, kind of a little snapshot. So if you want to go home and set that up, you can. And along with a few items that you may want to pick up. Now, keep in mind, right? So if you're talking about setting up a Yule altar, you want to set that up for 2 weeks. You do not want to leave that up for a day and then take it down, right? Because the solstice is 1 day, but the actual celebration of Yule is for 2 weeks. So make sure that when you celebrate it, you honor it in the way that it's meant to be honored. So that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining me. And I hope to see you guys next week. Merry Christmas, everybody. Bye-bye.